Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Living with XXY with this series with Kelsey talking about her son Elliott, who's 13 years old and has Klinefelter syndrome XXY. So in today's video, we're going to talk more about how Elliott really opened up and accepted the diagnosis after he got diagnosed at 10 years old. He's 13 now, and kind of the time frame in between on what gave him the courage to open up publicly and really put himself out there to spread awareness and make a difference. So once you guys told Elliott and you kind of told him age appropriate stuff at 10, and then over the last 3 years, how has this, why is he so open?
So, okay, you said age appropriate stuff.
Yeah.
And I just want to say I didn't feel like there wasn't age appropriate stuff.
Okay.
For him, for us.
Yep.
Like there wasn't anything inappropriate about any part of the diagnosis or any symptoms or concerns, because it was. So we said everything. Essentially, obviously there are, fertility details that just were too complicated, but it wasn't like information I was keeping from him. It was just complicated information about science more than anything
biology
else.
Yeah. The details.
Right. Like he didn't care to know that. If he would have shown an interest in that, absolutely, we would have gone. But so we shared everything right away. There wasn't any hiding. He was free to look up anything, ask anything. And we talked about it all the time. We told people in a way that was like, hey, isn't this cool? Like we found out Elliott has Klinefelters. Like that's super cool because that means he has 47 chromosomes. Like it was always a cool thing for him because he had been feeling off for 10 years essentially without having a Y. And so when we found the Y, we used it as a positive, man, I wish I had Klinefelters. So and we weren't joking. It was just seriously how we talked about it, and we talked about it everywhere, all the time. We brought it up because, of course, Elliott wasn't going to bring it up, but just oh, what do you think about this? Or have you thought about that? There's tons of other guys like you out there, and so
once you guys kind of gave him more information, and you guys brought it up in a really cool way, did you guys tell family and friends about it?
Yeah.
And how were their reactions?
Mixed, because I think people have their own preconceived notion about any sort of diagnosis, and I think people felt sad and oh, that's too bad, and I think we never acknowledged that as a
the sympathy.
Yeah, we just didn't even accept it because it was no, it's super super cool for us. This is who he is, and I'm who I am. And our genetic counselor, I remember her saying, if you looked at anybody's genes, we'd all be messed up. We'd all have, nobody actually is genetically perfect. We all have, part of a missing chromosome or something there. And so it's Elliott is literally no different than anybody else walking. It's just we know what it makes him special.
And so how, when did he start to open up about, when did he tell friends, or how did he tell friends? When did he start to kind of open up on his own?
Yeah. Right away, he told his best friend.
Okay.
And the way that he did it, because he has some social struggles that I think he couldn't figure out how to get the information out in a socially appropriate way and process her response at the same time. So we had the children's book, and the only kid's book that talks about XXY, and he ran, bless you, over to the door, her door, and left on her doorstep. And
just
then
the book?
Yeah, just the book. And then ran back and kind of watched, bless you.
Okay.
And then I think he texted her hey, I found out this thing, and he was more nervous about the interaction with a peer than telling her about Klinefelters, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
that was more
the social was more of a concern than it was actually the XXY.
Yeah, because that was already the hard part that he knew was the hard part. So her family read the book and learned about it, and then it was just a thing. it wasn't.
And she doesn't treat him differently. She just treats him as he is. And
Yep. It's just part of Elliott, and it comes up when he wants to talk about it, and in normal conversation, like normal 13-year-old conversation.
And then with this whole thing the reason why we're making these videos is because Elliott did a speech at school, which if you watch, I'll try to tag the video like here. If you want to watch that, it's like a minute long. He wrote a poem himself, and he spoke in front of of like 100 people in his school. This like poem, he memorized it all, and that's kind of like what kind of like sparked this interest in order to get you guys here and do videos and spread more awareness about it. And so what, like, do you feel like that was like the ultimate thing for him to do that and to really put himself out there?
Yeah. So, and I know he shared this already, and maybe it's in a video with you, but he started opening up more to his classroom when like Living with XXY merchandise came out, and so he would
when we had a store.
Yeah, when the store came out, he was like, this is my opportunity to show, right? Because if it's around, then people are like, oh, what's that? Oh, it's Klinefelters. It just brought it up for him naturally as far as the social part. So he would wear the shirt to school, and he would sort of slyly start opening up that way. And his teachers already knew he had Klinefelters. So, but during the process of their spoken word unit, he had written 2 poems, one about traveling and one about XXY. And his teacher emailed both Elliott and myself on the same email and said, I noticed you'd been working more on your traveling poem than XXY. And I think you have something special to share. Like, I think your voice in this Klinefelter's XXY is so impactful, and I would encourage you to work more on that poem if you feel comfortable. And that was it. Like, once she gave him the little push,
then he just took it.
Yeah, and he could have said no, and he could have been like, I don't feel comfortable, and we would have all let it go. But he took that, and then I didn't see the poem until after it was already totally done, and he Google shared it with both my husband and I, like during his school day, sent it to us. So I was like, what is this? I thought it was, and I had no clue he wrote it himself. I thought for sure someone wrote it for him. And so,
proud mama moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still, I'm like, how much did they write? But his teachers are adamant that their only job was to ask prompting questions. Like, encourage him to use feeling words because it doesn't come naturally, and encourage him to be super descriptive because he'd rather just be literal. Mm-hmm. And he had 2 or 3 professional spoken word artists that helped ask those questions and model, the presentation of it and all that stuff. And so he's really heavily supported, but totally independent.
And then he learned it. How long did it take him to learn it?
Honestly, I have no idea, because it was like this thing he did without even asking for us for help. Like,
so it was a fully independent 13-year-old opening up to the world speech about himself.
Yeah.
And he did it and then he spoke at school. And when you saw it, when you heard it at school, like what was that mama moment?
It was insane, because the reactions, everybody else had beautiful poems and great poems, but they were kind of like hobbies and interests, and people were not, it's hard for 12, 13, 14-year-old kids to be vulnerable. So but Elliott went there. And so the response from the group was insane. And I spent so much time hearing their encouragement of him, and like, they were just shouting like, yes. And I felt so happy for him. And there's a video that we took of the actual initial performance, and he walks on stage and he's wearing his Living with XXY shirt, and he has to wear a mask, but he takes the mask off and then throws the Living with XXY beanie on, and then does his poem. And it was like he had his armor and just like went for it. And so it was crazy. It gives me goosebumps still. And it was him. It wasn't anything I didn't even know about it. So
I mean, that's incredible at 13 that he can, or at 12 when he wrote it, like he could put himself in that really vulnerable situation, but he's proud of who he is. He wants to help people, make a difference, spread awareness, and that's really awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we thank you all for watching. Look forward to the next couple of videos, and we'll talk to you all soon. Have a great day.